So my question is, as a fairly new behavior analyst, there's a bunch of people that are getting kind of certified, and the field is still quite new in Canada, especially in Quebec. There's not a lot of behavior analysts. And so one thing that I find is we often talk about the rigidity of our learners. People with autism are very rigid, but I found coming out of my program, and Myra can attest to this as my supervisor, I was very rigid. And when I would do something and Myra would say, well, why'd you do that? And I said, well, Cooper told me to do it, right? So my question for you is, what was the kind of best piece of advice that you got, or best kind of thing that you have learned over the course of your career that you can give to someone who's still kind of like finding their ropes and learning what's best to do?
Well, the answers are kind of in your question, Daniel, to be frank. But it can't come, you can't prompt this. You have to have supervisors to support it. So I'm putting the pressure on Myra right now. And apparently Myra did this because of your question. But here's the deal. Supervisors create flexible behavior analysts. And they do that through the contingencies and the opportunities. So to me, a good supervisor of an RBT, even for instance, allows them to make decisions. Doesn't give them a cookie cutter behavior plan where if the child does X, you do Y. It's if they do X, here are your options. It depends. Think. Have priorities. For instance, people say, well, what do we do if? I'm like, well, what's the safest thing to do? What's the one that's going to build better rapport with the client? What's televisable? If someone was filming this and they dropped on the evening news, what would look better? Do that. So yeah, we have to give them some guides and if the X happens, consider these things. But flexible ABA comes from teaching people to be flexible, writing plans that allow flexibility, and not providing punishing consequences when people go rogue. Well, this happened and I did this because, and they calm down. Just learn from it, and maybe we'll codify, what that RBT creatively came up with. So it sounds risky. It sounds like a hippy dippy ABA, as someone recently called it. But to me, it's good ABA. Good ABA is very person-centered, and it was person-centered before we had a thing called person-centered planning. Good ABA is very responsive to the learner, right? I hate equating kids with animals, non-human animals. I'm going to do it. Like if you have a shape in a rat, a pigeon, you're working with your dog, how dialed in are you? You're so dialed in to that beast as you're shaping. You're not going, trial, excuse me, dog, pigeon, word rat, hold on, and taking a bunch of data. There's a fluidity to the interaction. And to me, good ABA has that. Really observant, dialed into the child, really thinking what their perspective is, right? Not just their overt behavior. How they feeling right now? They getting frustrated? They about to blow? It's not good enough, Daniel, for instance, for rigid ABA to be like, oh, they complied. I don't give a shit whether a kid complied. I want to know, did they comply with a smile or begrudgingly? Was it reluctant compliance or was it gleeful compliance? Because the future is in those descriptors, right? Reluctant compliance turns into severe behavior. And gleeful compliance turns into kids who get into the academics that we're presenting to them. So I guess my main form of advice to people is find a job where your company and your supervisors respect a form of flexible ABA, and it's not overly protocol driven. Here's the curriculum. Do this the same way with all kids. That's scary. And I think RBTs and good, smart BCBAs get in trouble in those kind of organizations. So that would be one. Seek out the job opportunities that allow for the flexibility. Yeah, I'm sorry, Daniel, I don't have much at strength other than that. Your question kind of made me go off on that tangent, that there's something about flexibility. I guess the other thing there's another one. Here we go. A young BCBA should not get bogged down with procedures. They should worry about their priorities. And again, make sure they align with companies that have good values and they're not afraid to talk about their values. In other words, again, I have very simple values: safety, rapport, televisable. And we're going to do procedures that fall under those values, and we're going to move towards meaningful outcomes. And it's not good enough to have a nice outcome with an untelevisable process where we lost the relationship and there was a whole bunch of unsafe situations along the way. Do you know what I mean? So we used to be Machiavellian almost in our pragmatism, right? It was all like, just get the outcome, effective action, Skinner. It's not just effective action. Mark Wolf told us that in the 70s. So did Alan Kasdan. It's not just where you're going, it's how you get there. Is it socially valid, right? Again, we use televisable because it seems to resonate better with people. So that's another one. Don't be afraid to articulate your values, know what they are, and that allows you to be flexible under that set of values. Thanks for that question.
You're good.
That was perfect. Yeah, thank you. I think it kind of ties in nicely with one of the other lectures that we had with Merrill, where he was talking about how, we've kind of just scraped the surface of what we know about behavior analysis, and it's foolish for us to think that we know everything that we need to know to help our populations, right? As we grow, we're going to learn new things, and it ties in nicely to what you're saying. If, your RBT tries something and it works, it doesn't mean that it's not good and we can't reproduce it, right? That's how we learn, that's how we grow. So I think it fits.
Right on. Yep. We have to, especially if we're doing a lot of office BCBAing, we have to be humble to know it's very hard to create meaningful behavior change with a single behavioral program written in an office.